Hi, Marie here from Pottery Crafters. In this kiln opening, there's a little twist. I'm going to show you how I glazed each piece. Well, if I don't like one, I won't show you. Just kidding. You may like it, so I'll show you anyway. All the supplies that I used for glazing are listed for you in the show notes below. Let's see how they turned out. Now this is a smaller load because I have bigger pieces and I could only use 1/2 shelf. This lighthouse turned out great. I love the color. The glaze pooled in the grooves of the stone pattern the way I wanted it to. I wanted it to look like a really old lighthouse, and this glaze did the trick. I love the colors. I used a silicone stone mold. It can be used for clay and cake decorating. I found it in the cake decorating section. It created that nice natural stone look. Let's take a closer look at how I glazed it. Before I show you how I glazed it, I want to go through a brief description of my prep work before glazing. I'm just going to go through it once, not for every single piece I take out of the kiln. Make sure you wipe your bisqueware off with a clean damp sponge before glazing. This is an important step to ensure that the glaze bonds nicely to your pottery. Next, apply your wax resist or film resist. I'm using the film resist. Wax resist will burn off in the kiln. With the film resist, I peel it off before I put it into the kiln. Either wax resist or film resist will work just fine. It's your personal choice. Make sure you mix your glaze well. This Hamilton Beach blender works great for me. I like how it gets to the bottom of the Amaco jars. Make sure you put your glaze through a strainer. This keeps any clumps or debris from getting onto your pottery. Now you're ready to glaze. I chose Amaco Albany Slip Brown for this lighthouse. I only need one coat inside. I don't want it bright white when you look through the windows. I used my Amagic fan brush. These are my favorite fan brushes. The long handle comes in really handy. The thin coat produces a deep golden brown color. I placed the lighthouse on the banding wheel and brushed the Albany Slip Brown on the outside. This glaze is really easy to work with and can be applied with brushing, dipping, pouring, or spraying. In this case, the pouring wouldn't work because I have all of these windows and a door. When I glazed the door, it fell into the bowl, so I scooped it out and let it dry. Then I used a detail brush and went over any spots that I missed. I let it dry and applied a second coat to the outside only. I love how this glaze creates two contrasting colors. That's why I chose it for the lighthouse. I wanted to make sure the glaze went in between the cracks of the stones. Where the glaze is thicker in between the cracks, the glaze will be lighter. Let it dry completely and fired it to cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. A beautiful light brown, giving you a nice contrast. This is a popular choice among potters to seek that look. I love the glaze I chose. It gives the lighthouse an old tone that shows off the stone texture, with only 2 coats on the outside. And the inside, with just 1 coat, has that rich, dark, rustic look. Let's go to the next one. I made this cat from Jessica Putnam's video. I love how it turned out. Except I thought the eyes would turn out blue. I love the way the glaze highlighted the texture on the cat to show the flowers. Let's take a closer look at how I glazed it. I chose Amaco Iron. I glazed the head first. I had to be careful not to glaze the eyes, nose, and tongue. I used a smaller fan brush around those areas. Then I used a detail brush. Glaze the rest of the head. Let it dry and put another coat on the face. Amaco Iron is the opposite of Albany Slip Brown. The more I apply, the darker the glaze gets, and the less I apply, the lighter it gets, from a light golden brown to a rich dark brown. That's why I chose this color for the cat. For the nose, I used Amaco Obsidian. I used obsidian on the eyes also. Around the eyes, I used Amaco Sapphire Float. And for the tongue, I used Amaco Red Gloss. With my tiny detail brush. Finished off the back of the head and sides with the fan brush. Then I glazed the body. The lighter body clay will give this glaze more of a contrast. The Amaco Iron glazes are highly versatile. Let the glaze dry, then applied Amaco Obsidian to the front paws. Let that dry, then applied a second coat of iron on the cat. A darker body will enhance the richness of the iron glaze, but the lighter body will give it more contrast. Let it dry completely and fired it to cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. I only applied 2 coats because I didn't want the glaze to be too thick and cover up the texture and the contrasting colors that it produces. I wanted the cat to be a golden and dark brown, and it worked out perfect. It's a good glaze to use on textured surfaces. Let's check out the next one. Well, I love the way this planter turned out. It's beautiful. It did flow the way I thought it would. I'll definitely be doing this glaze combination again. Let's take a look at how I glazed it. I started with Amaco Toasted Sage on the inside. I taped around the outside of the rim with painter's tape to help prevent any glaze from accidentally dripping down the outside of the planter. Pour the toasted sage on the inside. Swirl it around and tip it upside down. I let it sit for a good 5 minutes. While I was letting the toasted sage dry a bit, I brushed 1 coat of toasted sage on the bottom of the planter. After it set for about 5 minutes, I used a detail brush to get the dripping glaze off of the rim. Set it aside and let it dry. Set it upright, removed the tape, and wiped any toasted sage that got on the outside of the planter with a damp sponge. For the outside of the planter, I started with Amaco Obsidian. I applied the first coat vertically. This is a popular glaze, and it's known for its rich, deep black finish. This glaze does have cobalt in it, which makes other colors pop when layered over the glaze. You'll see that especially in green and blue glazes, and also with purple glazes like Smoky Merlot. Let it dry. I applied 1 more coat horizontally. I typically apply only 2 coats when I'm layering with other glazes. 3 coats sometimes can be too much, and I found pouring can be too thick when layering with other colors. The obsidian works well with both white and darker clays. even red clays. After the 2 coats, I applied Amaco Sapphire Float, this time vertically. The sapphire float should make the other colors come out even more vibrant. This sapphire float has a nice deep blue color. I think it's good for emphasizing other colors. Let this dry. I applied 1 more coat of the sapphire float, but only halfway down. I don't want to have too much glaze on the top because I'll be adding more glaze, and I don't want to get pinholes or have the glaze too thick. Apply it horizontally, then let it dry. Then I applied Amaco Textured Turquoise in the middle of the planter. I held the planter sideways because I didn't want the textured turquoise to drip down the lower part of the planter. Instead, I wanted the heat work from the kiln to make the glaze flow down. I let it dry and applied 1 more coat of textured turquoise around the middle. Now I don't care if the textured turquoise drips towards the rim, because when it's being fired, it will still flow downward. That was my theory. After I flipped the planter upside down, then I applied Amaco Seaweed on the top part of the planter, right above the textured turquoise. Just 1 coat for the seaweed, because it's a flowing glaze. It really loves to flow. Once that dried, I applied 1 coat of Artic blue. This should really bring the blue out in the planter. Put Artic blue on the rim, let it dry completely, and fired it to cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. Applying the Artic blue over the seaweed was a great idea. The Artic blue does have a cool light blue hue to it, which is great for layering with other glazes. Actually, that's what I mainly use the Artic blue for. I love the color that the textured turquoise produces, which has a beautiful contrast on textured surfaces. The sapphire float didn't come out as much as I thought it would over the obsidian. Next time I think I'll apply a coat of Artic blue or even indigo float. The toasted sage is my go-to glaze for glazing the inside of pots and mugs and bowls. It's just so stable and it comes out so nice and smooth and beautiful color and texture. I do love how the textured turquoise, seaweed, and Artic blue flowed down the planter. It's a beautiful combination. Let's check out the next one. I really like how this jewelry dish turned out. I made 10 of these jewelry dishes for a video on how to stop clay from sticking to surfaces. I tested 10 different methods and compare their effectiveness to help determine which was the best way to stop the clay from sticking. If you're interested in which methods work the best, I left the video link below in the show notes for you. Let's see how I glazed it. For this jewelry dish, I used Mayco Lavender Mist Glaze. Instead of brushing, I poured the glaze over the jewelry dish. When I have nothing to hold on to, I use these dipping tongs. They work really good for pouring also. I poured the glaze in the dish and swirled it around, then poured it on the outside of the dish. Wiped off the excess glaze on the bottom with a brush, then a sponge. Take it off the plastic lid, let it dry completely, and fired it to cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. The lavender mist shows various tones. The thicker you apply this glaze, the lighter and bluer it gets. And the thinner you apply the glaze, the color is more lavender and brown. I love the contrast in the colors. This lavender mist glaze works really nice on textured surfaces, but also nice on smooth surfaces, which creates a beautiful contrast, and I just love the color. Let's check out the next one. Well, this turned out really nice. It's my ice cream bowl. And place the spoon on the side of the bowl. It seemed big when I was making it, but now that I placed the spoon on it, it could have been a little bigger. It still turned out really nice. I love how the glaze flowed down the bowl. Let's see how I glazed it. First, I applied Amaco Honey Flux glaze. I brushed one coat on the inside and the outside. Honey Flux is primarily used as a layering glaze. It's applied over or under other glazes to create cascading effects. Let it dry. Then I applied a second coat of Honey Flux. The Honey Flux doesn't flow as much as the Spectrum Pearl White. That's why I chose the Honey Flux for this bowl. The Honey Flux is mainly a white glaze, but you can see a peachy hue in it. After letting the Honey Flux dry, I dipped the bowl in Spectrum Sangria glaze. I accidentally misplaced the clip where I dipped the bowl in the Spectrum Sangria glaze. Instead of holding the bowl, I carefully set it on a thin bottle and let the glaze drip off the rim for about 10 minutes. You can see where the glaze pooled and stayed on the rim. And as it's being fired, it'll flow down the bowl. Let it dry completely and fired it to cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. I love the colors the sangria produced. Makes a nice ice cream bowl. It could also be a soup bowl. With the extra drops of sangria on the rim, the glaze flowed a bit more. I have another video with this glaze combination. I left a link for you below in the show notes. Let's check out the next piece. Well, this small bowl turned out really nice. I like the rust color around the rim, and the glaze flowed down the bowl nicely. Let's see how I glazed it. I used Amaco Iron Lustre glaze for this bowl. I poured the glaze in the bowl. The iron luster has a warm iron brown look to it, with metallic green undertones. It does break over surfaces nice. Flipped it upside down, then placed it on a plastic cover to allow the extra glaze to drip down. I just brushed one coat on the outside. I let this dry. Then I dipped it halfway down with Amaco Blue Rutile. Now you have to be careful with the blue rutile because it loves to flow just like the seaweed does. But you get stunning effects from this glaze. It is one of my favorites. The colors range from a soft sky blue to a deeper indigo blue. I carefully set it on a thin bottle, and the glaze will have drops of blue rutile settled onto the rim, which flows down the bowl when I fire it. Let it dry completely and fired it to cone 5 with a 20-minute hold. See how much it flowed with that extra glaze on the rim? It flowed nicely and didn't flow all the way down to the foot of the bowl. But inside, it's beautiful. I love the color and contrast. And it produces a range of beautiful blue hues as it flows down your pottery. Well, that's it for this kiln opening. I hope I gave you some really cool ideas and helped you to glaze some pottery. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified whenever a new video comes out. You watching helps me to make more videos, like this one. Now head on over to my 21 wheel throwing tips, or my 21 underglazing tips. If you do, I get to play with more clay. Let's stay dirty.